फोन तो नहीं लाया आपने? Good morning.
Good morning, participants. We'll join in another 5 minutes. Our resource person is about to join. I request all the participants to please turn on the camera.
ज्वाइन करिए, है ना? थैंक यू।
Shall we start?
Sir, kindly switch on your camera. Sir, good morning, sir.
Good morning, good morning, good morning. Hi.
Everyone please turn on the camera. I request all the participants to please switch on the camera. A very good morning to one and all. I, Dr. Deepika Gautam, Assistant Professor of Management, on behalf of Himachal Pradesh National Law University Shimla, welcome you all on a second day of 2 weeks capacity building program on comparative public law and Hindu philosophy, research and teaching dimensions in 21st century India. I invite Dr. Sanya Yadav to please introduce the resource person for the morning session. Sanya.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you so much for giving me this opportunity. Good morning, everyone over here. Good morning, sir. It's a huge honor for me to introduce such a honorary person over here. And he does not require any introduction. First of all, I have heard him many times before that. And Sir Manoj Kumar, sir, is the director of Indian Law Institute. He did his doctorate in international law from Jawaharlal Nehru University, LLM from the University of Nottingham. His area of specialization is international law, human rights, constitutional law, international criminal law. He has published extensively in the field of international law, international relations, and many more. He also serves as a member of editorial board of various reputed national and international journals. In addition to his responsibilities as a director, he regularly delivers his lectures at various educational institutions, training institutions, UGC academic staff colleges, training programs of ICRC and ministries. He recently authored many books and edited many books in the recent past years. If we talk about scholarship, he has awarded International Development Research Center IDRC scholarship in 2009. He has been awarded CNR Short-Term Mobility Scholarship, Italy, Rome in 2006. He has been awarded Europe Commission Scholarship to pursue his LLM in Human Rights from the University of Nottingham. He has been awarded scholarship from International Institute of Human Rights, France, to attend 20th session program on human rights in 1998. He has been awarded Henry Janet Scholarship from International Community in 1999. He is a life member of Indian Society of International Law, New Delhi. He is a life member of ILI Institute, New Delhi. He is associate member of International Association of Refugee Law Judges, the Netherlands. He is a private member of International Criminal Law Network, The Hague. He is a life member of All Indian Law Teacher Congress and elected as a secretary for the 5 consecutive terms. Thank you so much, sir. I welcome you over here. Please, sir.
Thank you very much, Sanya and Dr. Chanchal and Honorable Vice Chancellor of the University. Now it's a greater responsibility is on me because Sanya has spoken in length about my achievement. That is not achievement. It's like, the more you grow, so you will add. So like, so in life, it keeps on adding for, and I'm sure that one day you will all have more than what we have achieved or what we aspire to do. So the topic which has like the first thing, it is a very important topic, but it's very difficult to do the research when you have to like, and that is the reason we find huge problem when we take a topic on the more on the like contribution in the ancient time or Hindu philosophy, particularly Hindu philosophy. If you look into, we find very few scholars have done that particular work. And why I'm saying, I wrote a paper long time back on because so there are concepts, and it's very equally important. It's equally important to undertake research in the Hindu philosophy or like development of a law in the different ages in the Indian scenario also. So what we discuss today, we discuss primarily in the contemporary, comparative public law, contemporary. If I remove the Hindu philosophy, then it suits like the contemporary period time. We work on that particular topic. So what Supreme Court of, even we don't go in the prior to the independence, we start from the 1947 in the domestic context, and primarily we focus all important judgment. Even in judgment, if you look into the Indian scenario, judgment becomes from the post-emergency in the human rights, environment, and everything. Even court started functioning on that particular. Legislations also on that particular. So we hardly do comparative, and we hardly go back to the beyond 25 years. So I see that I always say our study and teaching is revolving around, and even scholarship. We don't know who was in the 1950 professor of Delhi University and what article he has written. We know that Professor Bakshi 70 or 80 because they survives and they are like a great scholar. But who served Delhi University, which was established in 1922? It's a law faculty. What are the scholarship contributed from the 1922, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70? We have some hand or some ideas after the 70s onwards that this particular thing we find out in the Indian legal system. Our research is focused more on the contemporary. So the point which I am highlighting, our research is focused on for almost 20 years, 25 years. More contemporary research we do, whether it's related with the trade, whether it's related with the environment, whether it's related with the human rights, whether it's a constitution, all aspects. Why we do that? Because it's easy to locate the materials, research availability of literature is huge. Contemporary period, so everybody right to health. Now for 10 years, you will find plenty of materials will come in the research work in the right to health, linking with the pandemics. You will find a lot of writings will emerge and many students will continue. If you go back 1995 onwards, you see a lot of started writing WTO. But international financial institution can be traced from 1950 onwards. We can look into 1950 onwards, but focus in the contemporary time. So the point which I am highlighting, that focus is more on the contemporary research, contemporary teaching, and contemporary scholars. Scholars are also very important. I'll give an example. When I start teaching, and a paper which many of teachers here, you are here, Law and Justice in Globalizing World. This in the LLM paper course has been introduced by the UGC, Law and Justice in Globalizing World. The serious point which we noted, they did not define what they want to discuss. So scholars, eminent groups, they form a syllabus title. A compulsory paper has to be taught, Law and Justice in Globalizing World, to all these LLM students as a compulsory paper. Comparative public law as a compulsory paper, or legal research methodology as a compulsory paper. Comparative public law, you had an idea, but we have no idea what the intention of the drafter of the syllabus on the law and justice in globalizing world. And I know because Professor Madhav Menon and Professor Chimney was there. So initially, a chance discussion by accident, we discussed with the Professor Chimney, and in one of the law university, he was part of this, and he said initially he wanted the paper should be law in justice in international law and justice, or something like that is the way it has to. So primarily idea was the impact of international law in the justice. So what we are doing in this particular in last 7-8 years, we all are teaching according to our expertise. Somebody focus on the constitution element, some on the jurisprudence, and some are mixing both jurisprudence and this particular thing. I started looking into this subject and try to see what actually it intended. And in the process, so this is the research. In the process, what you will see, you start looking into the globalizing. So one word we have taken. So as a researcher, when you look into the globalization or globalizing, so I said what globalization means. Who are the proponents of the globalization? I'll come to this. So literature review or a scholarly writing, how you identify. So when you look into the globalization, so you look when persons are thinking about, their scholars started contemplating today we have very close access, or we are very effectively interacting with each other because of the intensification of technology and commercial aspects. So intensification of technology and other commercial angle has brought all of us very closer. And there are a lot of developments have taken place. So I started with examining, and I say those who are supporters, those who are proponents of this idea globalization, they are known as cosmopolitans. So scholars, so they developed a theory, cosmopolitanism. Like Thomas Pogge is instrumental, Brian Berry, Charles, Charles Beach, and many others scholars. So Thomas Pogge, Brian Berry, Charles Beach, they started into globalization. They said cosmopolitanism, because individual is not confined to its territory. Individual has become subject, global subject. He has identity for one state, but he depends from the international cooperation. So there's cosmopolitanism. Those who did not agree with this philosophy, those who did not agree, like Mark Welcher, David Miller, they said no, what you are talking about? Nationalism is very important, even in today's concept. State sovereignty is very important. So individuals are confined to a particular territory. If needs of the aspiration of the individual has to be fulfilled, it has to be fulfilled by the state. State A, state B, state C. It's not the responsibility of the global country or other states. It's a responsibility of the states. So they become communitarians, those who oppose that principle. So we have one hand cosmopolitans and other hand communitarians. When they started arguing, so they all tried to see philosophy. They started looking into the philosophy to build their argument. So some of them, they started with the philosophy, they started looking into the John Rawls. So John Rawls, who wrote a book on the theories of justice in 1974, very important book, which we primary social goods and the equality principle, difference principle, those who teach are aware jurisprudence. So he wrote a book on theories of justice. There he made an attempt to define justice as fairness, justice as fairness. So John Rawls justice as fairness, and there he said justice is intertwined. Justice is intertwined in the sovereignty or a territorial boundary. Justice is intertwined with a territorial boundary. Justice as fairness. So he said that justice means national justice or domestic justice, is not global. But many scholars, those who argue for the global justice, they started their point from the John Rawls. They try to expand the definition, and everybody use justice as fairness. So, and they say that justice as fairness, it applies globally. Difference principle applies globally. Difference principle means we have all responsibility. All states have a responsibility to help the poor sections of the society. So you see, so they try to look into the philosophy of the John Rawls. When we go a little bit deeper, we said that the concept has historical dimension. In the Greek society also, you find the references of citizen, world citizen. You find that historically it is available. But we started with this modern concept, and little bit we went 200 years back, and we look into the Immanuel Kant. Immanuel Kant, Immanuel Kant also a great proponent of some extent on the So he wrote a very small piece towards perpetual peace, a book, a small in 1950, towards perpetual peace. There he said three possibility he has discussed about. He said that there is a possibility of global justice if states are based on the Republican principles, and if they are voluntarily agree to cooperate, association of these states, then there is a possibility of cosmopolitan. So Immanuel Kant in 1950. So what we are discussing, so philosophy becomes very important. I said about the John Rawls 1975, 74, but also the reference we find into the 1795. And very important, which I never come across, even the refugee law. What he has also mentioned in towards perpetual peace, Right to visit, one important, which takes us to the, like, so if you teach refugee law, or if you teach a refugee law, so he says right to visit. In the cosmopolitan, like, people have a right to visit anywhere, any country. In 1700, 1905, in 18th centuries, Immanuel Kant says that people have a right to visit. Individual can visit any country, and then they stay. So host country has an obligation to treat him nicely, admit him nicely as a guest. So he said as a guest. So people have a right to visit. So right to visit, like, what we are talking about into international refugee law, like host state, state of origin, the concept. So we can go back to the Immanuel Kant. The philosophy can become very important, where he spoke, he highlighted that people have a right to visit. So freedom to move freely, like, you have it recognized in 18th centuries, is a well-established principle by the Immanuel Kant, where people. But what he has also said, receiving state has an obligation to treat them nicely. So you give food and you take them as like a hotel, or like, nicely. But right to visit is not permanent. Right to visit is not a permanent visit. Right to visit is not a permanent. So you come as a guest, you stay, and you go back. So it doesn't mean, you settle down. So that is also important point she's argued. But most important fundamental, if refugee law were evolved at that particular principles, things would have been different. Right to visit. But today, right to visit is not a right. Right to movement is there, but within a territory. Within a territory, you have a right to movement. You go, but you have to apply for visa, passport. Your visa is granted, then you may go to there. But what he has contemplated in 19th, 18th centuries, right to visit freely people from one part to the another part. All right. Now they take another important point. So I see philosophy becomes very important. Legal philosophers, political philosophers, they contributed significantly in the development of law, in the development of the society, and in the other aspects. We see everywhere they have contributed. But in the major issue remains to be answered in contemporary scholars not devoting time or not trying to explore. So if I look into the Hindu philosophy, so first thing occurs to me that this particular work is more related with the historical department, philosophical department, or like, an other relevant department. It has nothing to do with the law. When we talk about the law, we little bit go in the, like, British time, and then we start discussing. We are not discussing about even in the land issues, or like tax collection, Rayatwari system, and there are just missing in a historical. So number of things we are not discussing. We focus in the 50 to 60 years in the research and that particular aspect. So if you undertake a research in these areas, you have to rely on the writings of the historians. And historians means sometimes you read the book of A.L. Basam, the history, like, A.L. Basam, Romila Thapar, and other people. So and then you will start wondering whether you are writing a thesis in the history, or you are writing a thesis on the law. So the question remains, like, how to link. But the significance of Hindu philosophy is immense. Significance of Hindu philosophy is immense. We cannot negate. If we understand it, so today is like, I'm happy that Himachal National Law School has thought about in the faculty development program, always research methodology and like research design, literature review, research methodology, and then doctrinal, non-doctrinal, data collection, data analysis. These are the broad topics we keep on discussing. And there, here we have to understand the importance of the Hindu philosophy or any religious philosophy. I'll not confined with the religious philosophy, and everything is there. We have, so certain institutions focus on that particular aspect, very important. They want to see that how a religious practices have also helped in the evolving of law. What are the practices? The classic example in this particular field, which we start with both Ramayana and Mahabharata. When we look into I'll go into the detail in the next class or in the tomorrow. But in the conduct of the warfare, you find in the reflection on the various philosophical. But when you go and teach in the class, When you go enter in the class and you are teacher of international human rights law or international humanitarian law or any other subjects you start with the largely from the 19th centuries, beginning of the 19th century. So your focus is on the 19th, 17th century. So if you have to, like in a class, is the historical development of international humanitarian law. For an example, you take historical development of international humanitarian law. So a student has asked you in the class, sir, historical development of आप मुझे बताएं कि journey of the international humanitarian law. Journey of the international humanitarian law is there. So what you will do? You say you have been taught, you have been understood. You say I heard the father of international humanitarian law is Henry Dunant. Henry Dunant is the father of international humanitarian law. I said ki my knowledge goes back to 1859, Battle of Solferino. So law also developed in the historical context. Battle of Solferino. So you say ki Battle of Solferino, I think Solferino, Battle of Solferino. So you say ki Battle of Solferino has developed international humanitarian law. So when you are writing international humanitarian law, you say about the Battle of Solferino because by chance, by accident, Dr. Henry Dunant was passing through on that battlefield and he saw that a large number of people are lying and they desperately needed medical help. They were crying for the medical help or something. So because those who were injured in the unattended, a large number of soldiers were unattended, left to die in the battlefield. So that had transformed him. That has transformed him. He completely changed. He has not discussed or examined. He has not discussed and examined on the legality of warfare. He did not discuss about the international humanitarian law is not about the legality of warfare, whether law is just or whether law is unjust. So legality of warfare is not there. So what he discussed about the protection and care. So he, instead of legality, he said, this is not my job. So even historical origin, when we look into, so we as a teacher, when you go in the class, so you can make your class interesting by looking into these aspects and see the Battle of Solferino, how he transformed Henry Dunant, but he did not bother about the legality, who is right, who is wrong. So he said, if I enter in the legality of warfare, what will happen? I will not be able to devote on time to the protection and care of those who injured in the battlefield. So it's like a medical need for us. Basically, he become concerned about the medical need. Since we have been taught, since we have learned only through the Western scholars' writing, we always rely the journey starts from 1859. We never gone beyond. We never gone beyond. Each religion, Islamic, Hinduism, and every religion has certain rules and regulation for the conduct of warfare. So आप अगर हिंदुइज्म में जाते हैं तो शंखनाद early morning it starts before the sun set, war has to be ended, but those who are surrendered, they may be taken care. A lot of things are there. Even Sikhism has I'm just missing the name. In one of the battle, that somebody complained to the Guru Gobind Singh, look, this gentleman, a very famous person, even in Sikhism. So they said, what he is doing, he is serving water and medical treatment to the enemies. So there was somebody gone and complained to Guru Gobind Singh, just see, sir, like what he is doing. He is serving our own people, he is serving water and also giving medical facilities to our enemies. Guru Gobind Singh said he has understood. Tomorrow I'll just find out the name and other details. So means 1700, much before the Henry Dunant. So what he is doing, he's like, enemy are also, if they're injured, they also require, they are no longer fighting a active war. So enemy is a human being. We have to treat human being also when human being is no longer combatant. They are not fighting actively. They are not fighting actively. So what he needs, we have to treat him humanly. We have to treat humanly. We can't leave him like, in battlefield and say, he's not from our side. So he said, water is like, medical care, water and other things which need to be given to our soldiers, equally important for the other, and which has been appreciated by the Guru Gobind Singh. Tomorrow I'll discuss about that. So you see but it has not located by us. So Sikhism also, Islam has also, and Hinduism also. So all the religious philosophy, I'll not say Hindu philosophy, all the religious philosophy have significant contribution in development of law, conduct of basically humanitarian principles. If you look into the humanitarian principles, it has been highlighted very well in all the religious texts. Somehow we miss. It's not only confined to the Hinduism. It's like, it's available in the Islam. It's available in Sikhism, in Christianity, and all others. Some way in entire process, we legal scholars are left. We have not ventured. We have not gone there. One paper used to be Indian legal history. That has also been stopped. Well, like, earlier in Delhi University, Indian legal history, where they go back. So these subjects remain. So like, constitutional, socioeconomic conditions, all important aspects confined to the historical stream. So history students, so yeah, if I have to search, I have to go to the history writing. So I said in the beginning, if I have to understand even the course material which I have looked into in your particular, like, circulated by Dr. Chanchal, is, if you see carefully, all the professors are history professors, or except Upendra Bakshi has written, but writing of Upendra Bakshi also is overly, like, taken help from the historical professors. It's not the law professors. So writings are also professors. I have read also that papers, but you look into all the material, study material. So what you have located, when you have located I'm reading something, the course material which has been supplied to me, it's not contributed except Professor Upendra Bakshi, not much has been contributed. So first, the major problem in finding. So if I have to research design, if you have to take a work, and I say there is a plenty of scope to do research. There is a plenty of scope to do research in all areas. And where you have to, we talk about the, like, law is an instrument of social change, and you have to look into how law changes according to the contemporary time. I see that history has also an influence on the shaping of the laws. History also contributed. We have to understand, we have to learn from the historical. It doesn't belong to the exclusively to history. Also the, like, socioeconomic aspect, political aspects, other aspects, how governance was there in ancient time, medieval time, and modern time. We have to make a comparison. Even if it is not there, we have to encourage the researcher in that particular area. It takes you, so when you follow the philosophical aspect or religious aspect or historical aspect in your research, it connects you with the past with present. It connects you with the past with present. So you know something good practices, something bad practices, which you have to locate into. So there's a connect between the past purpose, like, and it also unravels. It also, if we start studying the history of laws, if we start studying the history of laws and legal system, history of laws and legal system, it unravels. It unravels. If you start analyzing, if you start reading history of laws and legal system, it unravels. It start opening what their social dimensions and gives an insight, social dimension, and gives an insight into the dynamics of economics, politics, and other ethos and cultural aspects. So you get more perspective if you go into the historical part. And very important, the importance of this, which I will read out, which Rabindranath Tagore said, the importance of the philosophy, historical aspect, which Rabindranath Tagore in 1946, Bangla Bhasha o Sahitya, in Vishwabharati, he mentioned, and that is the importance of this. According to Rabindranath Tagore, he said, those forces of good and evil, which go on shaping the society, invisibly. Those forces of good and evil which go on shaping the society invisibly, visibly, visibly, comma, imperceptibly, imperceptibly, also engrave their hiding on each successive layer of literature, in each successive layer of literature. If we can ever unlock that, ingrained, ingrained, if we can ever unlock that ingrained, comma, deep-seated history, comma, we will be able to discover, the real dynamic identity of our country. So he says, if we can ever unlock that ingrained, deep-seated history, we will be able to discover the real dynamic identity of our country. All right. So certain points, so that you see the deep philosophical point he has also. So to understand our own identity, our own different perspective, we need to go and look into the philosophy, we need to go into the history, which I'm talking about, and then we see that things can change. So even if, like, if I ask you somebody, when I talk about the human rights, protection of human rights, we all will jump and say, what great work done by the courts. And then you start naming the cases. He says ki human rights development journey. Even if you go back a little bit, Karachi Declaration or Karachi Congress session 1931, where the socio-economic rights have been recognized or human rights is there. Prior to that, 1925. Before that, also any basin. So if you see the 1895 human rights has been talked in different pages. But when we start talking in the classes, it talks about we start with the fundamental rights, and particularly part 3, part 4 of the constitution. We hardly go back to the Karachi Declaration. We don't go to the 1925. We don't go back to the any basin time. So there are a series of development which has taken place in the Indian philosophy. But most important that, like, duties of the king. Duties, I mean, in ancient time, duties of the king. राजा की क्या दायित्व था? राजा का दायित्व प्रजा की खुश रखने के लिए, happiness of the, it's like, people. So king has a duty. So, like, here we have a duty, but there in the ancient time, king had a duty. King had to take care of this, like, so human rights can be traced. Human rights is well articulated in the religious text and also in the ancient practices, Hindu philosophy, in all ages, medieval. I'll not say only on the, in all, like, form, Hinduism, Islam, and everywhere we find. So religious aspect, philosophical, have to be traced to make our student, and that is the effort here, to make our, so you teach the contemporary. It is the contemporary development, of course, but if you inside inform them how the what has been catalogued, what has been codified, it was always there. What importance you are going to highlight, what has been codified, what has been made in the part of the convention and constitution, these are very much ingrained in our culture, in our history, in our philosophy. So these things are not new. So human rights is not new. Taking care of the citizen is not a new. Taking care of the citizen was always in the history, in the ancient, modern, and medieval. Who will take care? So when we look into the contract, then we again go to the 16th century social contract, Hobbes, Locke, and Rousseau. Then we see, okay, social contract, the state has come. So Western philosopher, it takes you to social contract. So by Hobbes says, man is selfish, brutish. So absolute power has been given to the sovereign. Sorry, absolute power has been given to the sovereign. Locke says, no, property, right to life, and dignity, they are very individual, which even the social contract is there, it has not been surrendered. And Rousseau. So we go to the social contract theory to trace the human rights development somewhere where we recognize, because state is necessary. Who will protect? State is there. But when we look into the different philosophy, in the more in all philosophy, the behavior, the respect for the dignity, respect for the rights was always ingrained in different civilization. It was not necessary. When duties comes, define duty, Mahatma Gandhi had said, I have learned from my mother what is duty means. So he always cite that example. Illiterate mother, I have learned duties from my mother. He has not cited various Magna Carta and other about the duty. So that become an important point to think about. He took a note of her mother's statement regarding what are the duties of human being. And he said, this is the beginning. What research he has done? He has not gone anywhere. He said, the duty means what my mother has told me, and that has become. And we cite very proudly when we have to identify. In fact, I urge all of you, when you go in the class, duty should not start with the fundamental duties. That is very good and very elaborated into part 4 of the Indian Constitution. But of course, we have a duty to what Mahatma Gandhi understood the philosophy of duty, which he has highlighted in his he's cited everywhere. So duty. So you see, a statement by one particular person becomes very important, and though not educated, simply her mother said duties means that particular. So right duties conflict, where Mahatma Gandhi always cited duties. So philosophical underpinning is very important. That cannot be ignored. That cannot be ignored. The only problem, it requires little bit extra work. It requires little bit deep philosophical work, and it's become multidisciplinary approach, particularly history, philosophy, and then law. So it's become little bit tough and challenging. But who will do that? Who will do that? And I say that people have interest, scholars have interest. People have interest, scholars have interest. When you start looking into, they have interest to know in cultural practices, historical perspectives, philosophical perspective, how religious aspects have shaped various aspects. If you go into the in protection of environment, even in Hinduism, it's very elaborated. There are a lot of things of our festival or our functions in the countryside or indigenous people revolves around the forest or trees. The significance of trees are very much ingrained or very much rooted in the ancient time or Hindu philosophy or Hindu culture. Same holds true for the other religions. But when we look into the environment, protection of environment, we jump or we go to the 1972 Stockholm Declaration. So environment, protection of environment was not there. It means protection of environment was not there. So even protection of environment globally thought about 1972 onwards. So in one hand, we say ki protection of environment, and in fact in the domestic law also, Water Act, Air Act, everything has come after 72. And even judgments also started looking into the 1972. So what we see, the shaping of domestic law, nationally or internationally, it began after the Stockholm Declaration. Since we have failed, since we have not located, or somebody has written, but that has not attracted the attention of the scholars globally to look or examine various aspects of the development of protection of environment or any other stream. So philosophy, so that is the time, because we have not been groomed, in that manner. So the role of the teacher becomes very important. It's not like the failure. So when this is done, so maybe some of you will develop interest. And I say that, just a second. Madam, I'm in a meeting, I'll call you. I'll call you later. Okay. So I'm just saying, like, in 2004 or 2004, I come across a person, and maybe tomorrow we will get. So he wanted to, like, journal has come, International Review of the Red Cross. So he was the editor, and he met me. He says we are planning to bring a special issue on the International Review of the Red Cross, on the religious aspect, so philosophical or religious aspect in the development of international humanitarian law. And I think 852 number issue contains that. So he said, I want you to write on Hinduism and international humanitarian law. Like you, it was very difficult for me also. So there I'll just go into the literature reviews there. I said, and time was only 2 months. So when you have not studied anything or studied more on the Western perspective when international humanitarian law or modern humanitarian law, you start with the 1949, you hardly, I learned Hinduism on international humanitarian law by watching little bit Ramayana and Mahabharata in the young days. So Ramayana and Mahabharata, so like a lot of things we have learned, what kind of weapon has to be used, how the treatment of the soldiers who entered in the battlefield, when war has to begin, when war has to, role of the ambassador or dutas, like, communicating with it. So a lot of things we learned through the TV, we have never learned. So I just thought, okay, some principles are there. And then it's a big exercise when you have to write a paper. I wrote many papers, but I feel this paper is being, like, most cited. The moment you praise Hinduism and international humanitarian law, even now in the Google, it will come, the first paper, it will appear, Hinduism and international humanitarian law. So it reflects, like, how much people have interest. So many people you write, but that paper. Then I started looking for the material. Searching the material, literature review. So, like, for writing any paper, literature review becomes very important. Literature review part I'll take a little bit later, but let me just quickly finish with the importance of historical legal research, which I have mentioned with the word of just Rabindranath Tagore. And then there are certain points which we have advantage if we start historical legal research. The first, as I mentioned, how to connect past and present. So there is a first which we have already referred. The first point, it connects you between your past and present, and then you take into the future how to evolve. That is the first. The second point, it also takes you to the archival history, like, whatever the history is there, and or helps you in developing a social perspective. So when you start exploring and looking into the history of law, it will help you in shaping and giving a new social perspective in whatever areas you are working. So by looking into the historical aspect, we can always look into the new perspective, new dimension, we help into this. It also helps us when we look into the functioning of, it also helps us to understand the functioning of institutions, how institutions have functioned in there in the ancient time, social relation, institutions, social relations, legal systems, institutions, social relations, legal system, governance, economic activities, cultural and educational processes, and attachments to the rise and fall of civilizations, rise and fall of civilization and dynasties. Next point, which I feel history provides us its rich resource. History provides us a rich resource for understanding the social mission of law, and functioning of the legal institutions, if any. What generally it's like king had every power in the ancient time. Then the last point which I just said, so it helps us to understand the functioning of the various institutions, social mission, and functioning of legal institution. Other important, it also helps us if you look into evaluation of the institution of self-government, abolition of slavery, like of historical slavery. So slavery was like even the justified in many places for a long time. Abolition of slavery, emergence and discussion of gender equality, even due process concept can be examined in the due process concept, and gradual development of human rights or fundamental rights. Thus, it is important to undertake a research on a historical perspective. What is important in a research? When we do the research, we have to have also philosophy or concept. So if you are writing on the property, right to property, even intellectual property rights, you philosophical, what property means, what a conceptual is the property, that has to be also defined and little bit. So like, so what I am speaking, what I am highlighting, it should not take your complete study on that particular, how you have to accommodate these views. So I am saying that whatever the contemporary topic you take for the research, which has to be input of the historical background. So it depends upon your research area. I'm not saying the importance is been realized, but the importance can be summarized in a very limited manner. It is not required. So it depends upon if you do something exclusively on the philosophy or Hindu philosophy, or like, you want to trace development of human rights in ancient India, then you can go into detail on the historical completely. But if you are doing something on the development of the journey of human rights in Indian context, ancient, modern, and medieval, you just little bit in brief you discuss. You don't need to. So you have to adjust as a researcher, because big challenge a researcher has when you start doing research, where to end or where to begin and where to end. That is the major challenge. So one has to be very focused. Okay, how much I can adjust. So these are the ideas. So I'm saying like a Hindu philosophy or historical perspective is important, but that decision is yours. Okay, how much input you can uh, 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 include in your study. So if you start focusing on theory, it can go into theory for many pages. So conceptually, that other things, you have to take a decision on that particular count, and you work accordingly on that particular there. Now come to the what has been told to me also in the literature review. In the literature review becomes very important. Literature review has very important part in the research. So here, if you look into the philosophy, it's written. It's not like survey, it will help, or some kind of, it's primarily historical research. If you in philosophy, if you go into the, you like, it's going in not analytical, you are going into the digging into the historical research. So more method will be appropriate method will be historical method of research, which will be followed by you when you look into the philosophy. You don't need to go for the survey. You don't need to go into other aspects. You have to digging the material, identifying the material is there. We began our discussion. We started with the limitations. We started with the limitation. What are the limitations we have? So first thing, why the question which we have, limitations. Limitation, we don't have, we have very few writings available on the philosophy. Our law professors have not significantly contributed. The area has been addressed by hugely by the history professors and philosophy professors. So area has been dominated. So I can name like L.R. Pena. He wrote a particular book, article on Hinduism in 1985 in Australian Journal of International Law. Then you have a Shastriji Hague that he gave a Hague lecture on Hinduism and various aspects of Hinduism and Hindu philosophy. He delivered a Hague lecture in 1957 or 58. That is the two. Then we go into the, if I have to do research, I go into P.V. Kane. P.V. Kane's book, that is the series of books on the Hindu philosophy you find. It's not law professor, but P.V. Kane from Pune, he wrote a series of volumes on the philosophy. So you find very handful of people who have contributed in that particular area in the Hindi. So literature is not available. And you may find some of the literature which is written in the beginning of the 20th centuries and beginning of the, or the like end of the 19th century by the Bengali scholars. Bengali scholars have contributed on the philosophical aspect. Many books were written in the Dhaka University and Calcutta University professors in the beginning of the, in the late 19th centuries and 20th century. You'll find a lot of writings by the Dhaka University. That time Dhaka University was part of the India Senate. So the Dhaka University Bengali professors and Calcutta University professors, they have written. So their books are available. But their books are also available in the, there is a site. So if anybody wants to do research, that you have to go into the archive site. There is a archive, you in the Google you put ARCHIV archive, and then you you develop a method putting, depending on your topic, you may find some books, very ancient books you will find in the archive site on the online. There I have downloaded series of books in that particular site. So one has to locate on that particular area, the books is there. So first challenge as a researcher, the philosophy, the paper which you are going to read, the material which has been given to you, we find contributions are very less. And this point can be justified. This point can be justified by examining the reading material which has been served to you or given to you. The reading material which has been given, it's largely given by the, provided by the, it's contributed by the non-legal professors. You see the name and you can, except Upendra Bakshi, even Lingat, Robert Lingat, he has contributed, he has a book also, you will find. And I see that A.L. Basam, then Robindranath Thapar and other historians have contributed significantly on that area. So we have to rely. So it becomes it's a historical method of research, and we have to also depend hugely on the historical writings in the literature review. So literature review we may find, and I have suggested any one of you after this course, if any one of you after this course have interest in working in the Hindi philosophy or Islamic philosophy or Christian philosophy, I'll not say only Hindu, you must go to the archive site. Archive, there's find, there's a very huge collection of books are there. You will find very good books on the ancient, and largely the books are pre-independence books are available there, which you can be helpful for your research on that. What Quatelia has said, what Manoj Smith, all the books are also available in that particular site, and you can download and you can keep it for your research purposes there. So literature review is become very important. Literature review. So when you start research in this particular, even the Hindu philosophy, you find a gap. You find a gap, a research gap. You find a problem in the research. So what you notice as a researcher, you find a research problem, a genuine research problem and research gap. Research problem and research gap. What research problem? Research problem is that very few people have attempted. Gap is a huge, it's a large gap, because study of human rights, development literature of human rights begins with the 10th of December 1948. So almost 90% literature. Even if you search the article to come and teach you, I start looking into that, like, philosophy, Hindu philosophy and others. And then what I have noticed, a quantum jump, a few line on the Indian Hindu philosophy, then everybody moved directly to the 20th centuries and the Constitution and then Universal Declaration. So I want a particular detail. So my quest for knowledge was not satisfied. My quest for knowledge, my inquiry was not satisfied. So I was scientifically investigating. So as a researcher, you investigate. So as a for hours class, you can manage. But when you are search your thrust for a research, you find ki what has been written, it's everybody is coming to the directly to the 1948. So what you say, a research problem, a huge research problem exists, because nobody has written completely covering in a more systematic manner or to build a knowledge in the legal field. So that gap is very much there. Research problem is there. So you have to go. So you are, as a researcher, you are going to fill that particular gap. If at all you decide to work, you are going to fill that long gap which exists in the literature. So there is a disconnect between the modern phase and ancient phase or philosophical phase. It has been segregated by the subject wise. So Hindu philosophy has taken or has become integral part of the history department and philosophy department of the various university. Unfortunately, it has not become part of the, even Kautilya has contributed, but we don't take, Manoj, number of books are there, but they are not prominently figured in our teaching or our classes. So we see some literatures are there which needs to be tapped on, and then we can use in the classes and other things. So the first is become, when you start looking into, you find that there are not sufficient literature exist on that particular. So you have a plenty of opportunity. You are not going to repeat. And I said, Hinduism and international humanitarian law, today you find it means it's such maximum time. So many people, they want to write. So paper which I wrote in 2005, I consider that the paper is still very relevant for a large number of scholars. If any writing has come subsequently on Hinduism and international humanitarian law, like S.R. Bedi, Chandrachud's son, number of people I have seen that they have written, but they all have cited, because that's easily find. They easily find. So importance remains. Like, so what I have written I've written the enforcement of human rights in a different perspective that are cited, but not like this. So you see the gap is, it means gap is huge. And that gap has not been filled. Subsequently, some authors have also written, S.R. Bedi has written, then Chintan Chandrachud's younger son, he has written, or 2-3 scholars have also written on that. But the first article remains relevant till today. So you see the gap. So what I have identified, I have searched, it is that becomes very important. So there's a plenty of scope in here. So it's not repetitive. As a scholar, you all have to think about the area where you can contribute significantly. So when literature review starts, so literature review, let me just focus on the literature review. When literature review we start, so what literature review involves? What literature review involves is process, is reading. So literature review involves reading. So you read the literature, reading, analyzing, evaluating. So literature review involves reading, analyzing, evaluating, and summarizing. So what you do as a literature review for the research purpose, you start with the reading, with the objective, what the authors have written, what they have said in the reading, analyzing, evaluating, and summarizing. And you summarize whatever is there. There are certain points, and it helps you. By doing this, it helps you what is already known about the topic. The first thing when you start reading, so you say, okay, what has been already said, what is known to the world about the particular topic. So that is the reason as a researcher, for any area when we start, we ask you for the literature review, because literature review becomes very important for identifying a research gap or research problem. You have to. So when you read all these things, then you understand what people have written, what they have written. So you know that alerts you there. The purpose is what has not been covered, what has not. The purpose is to identifying. You are not reproducing. You are not reproducing which has been said or written. So purpose is because aapke supervisor, or now you are supervisor, you are teaching, you will ask the students what is the new you are going to contribute. So the first thing, what is already covered, that is there by looking into the. And also, what are the concept and theories? The second point we by literature review, what are the concept and theories have been applied to your specific topic? So you learn also what are the concept and theories. So when you are looking into that when you are looking into the literature review, you also come to know what are the concept and theories have been applied. What are the theories, what are the discussion has taken place, that helps you how authors have moved. I said, if I am able to tell you the Immanuel Kant, why I'm able, because I just tried to see what historically people have spoken about. So he spoke about the cosmopolitan law in 1795. He talked about right to visit. So when I start reading, analyzing, I said the concepts were discussed much before modern period. 300 years back it has been discussed, elaborated in the Immanuel Kant's writing. I have also learned if I get a chance to speak somewhere, the protection of refugees, I can say, or treatment of the asylum seekers can be linked with the what Immanuel Kant had said, right to visit. Right to visit can also say protect. Even if I have to protect the Rohingya, I can apply. I can seek in right to visit. People who are they were as a tourist, but these are for the saving their own life. So concept and theories, but this can be only when you devote time, when you read. So reading literature review becomes very very important, and that helps you to understand concepts and theories. It also helps you understand concept and theories which have been applied to the topic. Whatever the topic you have, what are the concept, what are the theories that will help. What then the third point. So first point, what has been said about the topic, what has the first point, or what is already known about the topic, that helps you in the literature review. Second point, what concept and theories have been applied to the topic, what concept and theories have been applied to the topic. The third point, which I feel, what research methods have been applied to the topic. So topic, what you are taking, similar topic, what research methods have been applied to the topic. Then what controversies, if there is any controversy, what controversies about the topic and how it had studied, how it is studied. So if there is any controversy or something is related with the topic, it existed, that also helps you understand, or different point of views also it helps you to understand. Then who are the key contributors? Who are the key contributors to research on the topic? Who are the key contributors to the research on this topic? It also helps to understand who are contributed in this particular area. If I can add further, so what I can say, comprehensive literature review under this, the purpose of literature review. So the purpose of literature review, as I outlined in a broader manner, that what has been said about the topic, what are the concepts and theories have been discussed, what are the research methods have been applied, what are the controversies related with the topic, and key contributors. That can also summarized. If this purpose can be also summarized in 2-3 points, the purpose what I have discussed in 6, it can also be summarized in this manner. The first, it helps you, the survey literature review helps you to understand the current state of knowledge. The literature review helps you to understand the current state of knowledge in the area of inquiry, the first point. So that, if I put together all these 6, so because literature review, and when you undertake a literature review, it helps you, the basic inquiry which you have in your mind, the investigation which you want to undertake, it helps you. So your literature review should be more detailed in a particular say. The second, which is very important, the purpose of the literature review. So first, what are the contribution, what are the approaches is there, that there. The second, which is very important for the research purpose, it helps us to understand, or it helps us to identify, not understand, it helps us to identify. So literature review helps us to identify gaps in knowledge in that research area. Gaps in knowledge in that research area, whatever area we choose, what are the gaps are there, that helps. So as a researcher, you are searching and say, okay, research is nothing new. You search again and again, and you're moving in a circle and you're going. But that is not the correct interpretation. You search, but you search what has not been searched, what has not been addressed. Your search is there through the various literature to identify the gap, identify the question which bothers you, the answer, pandemic situation and WTO or TRIPS agreement. This is the basic question. Waiver. So it has not been addressed. It has not been addressed adequately, and that is the reason governments are jumping. Governments are requesting for the waiver. India, South Africa, Brazil, requesting the patent waiver for the licensing for other things. Compulsory licensing you will do, that will apply domestically. But pandemic medicine vaccine has to be circulated to everyone. It's not the vaccine only one country. India can make easily accessible, but India has also an obligation to serve the other nations. So we come to so that particular thing you learn by identifying the gaps. So we have noted certain gaps in the patent because of the pandemic, which has not been addressed adequately to deal with, where a vaccine or vaccine is required, that has not developed. It has developed during the crisis. But how to pricing, how to make it affordable, how to make it accessible for everyone, because patent monopoly, it makes it very expensive. So a lot of issues have been there. So patent you have worked, but this gap has not been identified. Now people will undertake. So gap, identifying a gap or research problem, that is the objective of the research. The third important part, identifying who are the authors, who has contributed in this significantly in that area. So you become familiar with these certain names. That is very important. As a researcher, when you finish your work and somebody asks you whom you consider a great scholar in this particular area, and you stammer, you say, sir, I don't know. Then you come immediately Constitution, then MP Jain, MP Singh, you say. You might have not consulted, but immediately. So as a researcher, you have to identify the national or international scholars, both the scholars who actually helped you in shaping your study. Of course, these certain books are seminal books, or that will be there. But I'm sure for any research, you consult a large number of books and articles. So there you identify, as I said, cosmopolitan in my class. I have just mentioned you Thomas Pogge, Brian Berry, William Wilcher, David Miller, lot of names I've cited. So names like, I could have cited only John Rawls and Immanuel Kant, but I saw the contemporary authors also who has contributed. So you have to remember and you have to know into that area. It helps also you. The next point, the purpose, it also helps you to prevent. So literature review, like, you have got some idea, but it also helps you or prevents you from reproducing same thing. Literature review, like, it helps you from reproducing same thing. So you like, you are alerted, you know that what has been done and you are very careful. You don't need to say same thing because that becomes stale and very prosaic, very common thesis. If you keep on saying same thing, what's the role of the Supreme Court of India, role of the, that will not serve the purpose. You have to bring something new, something unique in your study. So it helps you, literature review helps you to understand what has been said, so you are not going to reproduce. So that is important part is there. I have already said, that is, I'm not going to take it. Exposes researchers to gap in the literature review. Exposes researchers to gap in the literature review. So you become familiar when you read so many things, you know that this is the problem. This has not been adequate. So exposes researchers to gap in the literature review. It also helps to understand, to locate ongoing debate in your area of research. Ongoing debate in your area of research. So ongoing debate, like, if somebody takes a research in the right to health, by looking into the right to health today's context, so you will understand what kind of debate is going, what WHO keep on saying, what WTO is saying, what is WIPO is saying, what the Security Council is discussing, how the national governments are discussing about the tackling the right to health. So if I say, I come across two terms by reading in the recently ongoing debate regarding the vaccine. So there are two important terms which WHO said, we have to avoid. Some of you might have heard, but when I start reading, exploring, then I've noted a term which is new for me. So I'm just confessing and I'm saying that I located vaccine nationalism. So it's like, we have to avoid vaccine nationalism. And then also they said health isolationism, vaccine nationalism and health isolationism. So what they said, vaccine, like, all states like United States, UK, India exported, but now they say export is closed. So they said priority will be given to our own nationals. Even in the federal structure, they say UP Aadhaar card will be instrumental. So your Aadhaar card has to be on the local. When we migrate every time from one state to the another state, your utility bill or other documents will not be. So even the vaccine nationalism has become local vaccine nationalism. So they said if your Aadhaar card is from Jharkhand, you will be administered vaccine in Jharkhand, not in Delhi, not the other places. So you see, vaccine nationalism is a dangerous. So what WHO said, vaccine nationalism. So the word we talk about, vaccine nationalism, the otherwise it's a responsibility of all the states who has developed the vaccine and who have developed the vaccine to share the knowledge to the global community. In many African countries, we have only handful, 10,000 vaccines. And populations are 2 million, 3 millions in many African countries. So you see who will get, they have no technology, they have no knowledge how to make vaccine. So they depend upon the international community. So this is the problem which demands international cooperation. which demands international cooperation. So this problem is not confined to a territorial boundary of state A or state B. Its solution demands international cooperation. So we all have to work to resolve this crisis, which has acquired the dimension of humanitarian crisis. Humanitarian crisis there. So that is the reason WHO says that health isolationism and vaccine nationalism is not good. US, European nations and UK all have a responsibility, those who have developed vaccine, to make it available for the everyone. And that is the reason the second stage, what WHO, WIPO and WTO all are engaged to making it accessible. So there's a discussion going on June onwards, how to make affordable, accessible the vaccine. So you see, so how I come to know this term and you came to know from me. So we develop a chain. I read something, I passed it to you, and I'm sure you 60 students will sometime use somewhere in the class. So some term has become very important. This is also a research through the literature review. So I developed the interest to find out what pandemic, what obligation a state has during the pandemic, how WHO regulates the pandemic. So we find why China is accountable, why the public emergency of international concern. What is the basis for that particular? Then we look into the WHO International Health Regulations 2005. Section 6 says if there is something which has like cross-border impact, they have to inform the WHO. There is an obligation under the Section 6 of the International Health Regulations, which China has not done on that. So first time on 30th January, WHO has declared public health emergency of international concern. Public health emergency of international concern. So it's not the domestic concern, public health emergency of international concern, and subsequently we see. So a lot of developments on the right to health. So right to health is not, if you definition, when you look into the right to health, it doesn't mean absence of diseases. Right to health doesn't mean absence of diseases. So you say, no, right to health is not applicable because there's no disease, I'm fine. But what it says, right to health definition, when we look into the definition of right to health, we find out in the looking into WHO definitions and international, it's a wholesome development, mental and physical, and also the interpretation, because right to health is linked with the right to life. So definition is not identifying the mere absence of diseases. It talks about enjoyment of all the, so it's a base enjoyment of all human rights based on the right to health. So the large scope has been there. So ongoing debate becomes very important, whatever the area talk. But historical part, when you take talk, that is not ongoing debate, importance you have to realize. But I'm applying in both sense. Whatever the topics, your ongoing debate, you have to keep in your mind as a researcher. And where you get this information, whether India can file a case in the International Court of Justice, whether Netherlands can file a case against Syria for the practice of torture, for violating. So a lot of things we learn through the online, offline, and printed material. So it helps us to understand. So literature review becomes very important. And as a researcher, what I suggest and urge all of you, when I go in the class, when you go in the class, आप सभी जाते हैं class में, आप पढ़ाते हैं, it's always, research is not only what applies in the published article or publication of article. Research also applies for the teaching. And teaching, because today's teaching is very challenging. The moment you ask, you don't know what kind of question will a student will ask. The traditional days have gone. So because when you are teaching, they are same time they are working on the internet. And they know what South Africa has said, what international community has said. So research become very important part for the teaching as well. So literature review becomes very important, not only on the research, also in teaching. So one, as a teacher, you have to equip yourself. So research skill is equally important in the teaching of the class in the 21st century, and we must devote on time on the teaching part also. research. So literature review becomes very important. So we should read and completely newspaper, whatever comes in, and participation in seminar. I'll give you an example. Certain things I have said you, which I have picked up from people like you. They raised a question. Sometimes I was able to answer, sometimes I was unable to answer. Not necessarily I'll say that every question I can answer. So I was unable to answer, but it prompted me to look back and see that what he has asked and what is the question. What I have learned, like recently I participated in the refugee conference. There I noted a decision of the Manipur High Court. The Manipur High Court has allowed, which is contrary to the Supreme Court of India. Supreme Court of India in one case said that there are 7 people can be deported. Government deportation order was not stayed, and where the defendant lawyers argue that there is a principle under the international law, principle of non-refoulement. You can't expel anybody. Whether it's a national or non-national, state cannot expel if that person has, his life is in danger if he's forced to send a particular country. So deportation is subject to that guarantees that his rights will not be violated. So in this case, where Supreme Court has said deportation of 7 or 8 individuals have been permitted, that deportation order of the government was challenged, matter came to the Supreme Court said no, and Supreme Court interpreted. Thus you see, that is a new interpretation. What Supreme Court has said, principle of non-refoulement. So principle of non-refoulement, Article 33 of the UN Convention on the Rights of the Child talks about the Article 33. Means आप expel नहीं कर सकते. Expel, like people, voluntary. Repatriation has to be voluntary. People want to go. How they have entered in a territory, that is not the concern. But repatriation has to be voluntary. The Supreme Court, in this case, interestingly, so when they argued that principle of non-refoulement will be violated, then court has a new interpretation. Court said no, if we accept the principle of non-refoulement, then it means we are giving a right to the people, right to the non-citizen. So they are the not citizen, they are the non-citizen. So right to citizen to move in India freely anywhere means we are making Article 19(1)(e), Article 19(1)(e) of the Indian Constitution available to the foreign nationals. So they can move freely. So if I accept your argument, so this is the statement court had said. So court had said, no. If we accept non-refoulement principle means Article 19(1)(e). So I draw analogy with the Article 19(1)(e), which says people can move freely in the country. But Article 19(1)(e) applies only to the citizens. When you look into it, it makes a distinction. So thus Article 19(1)(e) is available to the only citizen, thus it's not applying. So it's like, it could not correlate with the principle of non-refoulement, cannot be linked with the Article 19(1)(e), and thus they have to go to deportation. But Manipur court, which we learned, so because there they interpreted refugee convention and they granted 7 people from the Myanmar regime to come to Delhi and register for the refugee status. So, but these things you come to know when you participate. So when you meet in an interaction or something. So every exchange of ideas, researchers you get something from the exchange of the idea. So I said Manipur case, which is very important. One can look into the Nandita Haskar. This is, I think, 8th June 2021. Recent cases one can look into and that you can examine yourself. So then it also helps when we look into the literature review, it also helps. What are the ideas you agree of the other authors and what are the ideas you may not agree? So you can also develop what he proposes and what you are agreeing with that, and you have different views that also can you contradict when you develop in your writing. So overall, whatever literature review I have said, that become very important in the research. In our context, when Hindu philosophy, some of the points which we may not be useful, let me say whatever I have said, some of the points which may not be useful because it's a historical. Already you have to archival research you have to do, then you have to look into. You have to also verify something on your own way, something newness you can bring. But overall, the literature review which I have discussed, that as a researcher you have to apply, whether you undertake the Hindu philosophy or you take the any other contemporary topic, comparative public law or comparative research. If you do in this particular literature review is there, you have to also know how to identify your text, how to identify your research problem. That is also very important as a researcher. Some of the points, research design, which tomorrow I'll take. I have a little bit class, just but cursorily I'll take because I'll focus on the other topic in 10-15 minutes. Tomorrow I'll speak on that research design, and then we'll proceed accordingly. With this, I finish for today. And if you have any question or queries, I believe I hand over to the organizer. Somebody is there from there. University. Sania, you have?
If any participants wants to ask any question, please.
I think there are.
May I?
Acha, I'll just, there are two questions already in the chat box, which I'll take, and then we'll come to the other question one by one. So the first is is it possible to get new interpretation comes from different judgments in literature review? Of course, and as I said, two different judgments I have said, how Supreme Court had said and how the High Court of Manipur had said about the protection of refugees. In 1 year, Supreme Court had said, throw them out, let them go back to their own country, deportation, without looking into whether their life is safe after once they are handed over to the Myanmar government, which is persecuting always Rohingyas, but handing over these amounts to violation of human rights of the Rohingyas, those who have been already deported. We don't know the fate or something. Deportation is permissible. It's not absolute, stay on the deportation. But state can deport only to the country where his life is safe, not to the country where life is in danger. So always new interpretation we see in the judgment, if you see human rights perspective, what has been said in 1976 and subsequent cases in the right. So 1976, suspension of enforcement of entire fundamental rights upheld in ADN Jabalpur versus Sivkant Shukla. Subsequently, 44th constitutional amendment. Lot of changes has taken place. So new judgments, new developments can become part of the literature review. That's not you can do that. The second question is by Hitesh G. I think it is appropriate to cite primary sources in the literature review. Please guide, sir. It is appropriate to cite primary sources. Generally, it's not required in the primary sources where literature review. Primary sources is primary, which you can, we never ask a student to do the literature review of the UN documents, annual report or law commission report. These are the documents which will always help you without going. There are very important documents which opinion has not been expressed by any author or something. They are basically suggested. So that become very important tool for the research. Reliance on the primary sources. If you literature review or not, reliance on the primary sources, because primary sources are easily available these days. If there are a lot of discussion on CA, but if you look into the Joint Parliamentary Committee report, which has 425 pages, I have read that one. So I think my interpretation changes. And I also the party line and discussion. So discussion take place for the 2 years, 2016 to 2018, various political parties. They dissented also. They did not agree for everything, but there are different arguments there. So that source become very important for your research purpose. So if you're writing something on the CA, one has to go into that particular part of of the parliamentary committee report, which is have uploaded the entire discussion which taken place. You get both views. So primary sources is very important. You don't need to primary sources as part of literature review, but primary sources is a very important document for the research. UN documents and other documents are very important for your research. Now I'll take the third questions, like 2 questions I have answered. If anyone, I think somebody wanted to ask a question. Yeah, Ruchi has asked, sir, is there any minimum requirement for books to be mentioned in literature review? Literature review, it's not number game. So one thing you have to keep in the mind, what is happening, literature review is distinct from the book review. Literature review is distinct from the book review. It should not be like in a book review, what author has said. What author has not said is a summarizing. You reading, analyzing, and then you are summarizing. So you are trying to see what are the gaps are not has been added. So literature review supports you. Why you are moving on that particular research? Because these authors have contributed. So you are not making a book review is a good or bad. You are saying the authors have discussed, but these are the gaps are not been addressed. So strengthen your point of strength, that will strengthen your work and justify why you have chosen that particular topic. So number is not necessary, but if you are a social science teacher, social science, I feel literature review is given huge importance. A chapter is devoted on the literature review. Complete chapter is in the literature review. If you read any thesis from the TIS or other places, a very detailed research is done by the from the social sciences research. But for the legal research purpose, a reasonable, how much you will say, but important books and important articles one should cover. Important books or seminal which makes an impact on your study may be part of your literature review. Reasonably, it's a way if you cover 10 to 15 books or 10 articles, that will be sufficient for literature review when it's a part of your synopsis. So 10 10 or 12, then you can do that.
Sir, I have a small question. I'm trying to do some research on the role of technology in ancient India. So I would, from your experience, I would like to know that where I should look for, because technology is something we had been lacking in India. So I could not find much of material in this field. So would you like to suggest
So
some
your
authors
topic
or
is
some part of?
role of technology.
Yes,
Role of
in
technology
India,
in India.
ancient, yes, sir.
In
And
ancient.
from a from a historical perspective, I am trying to link technology with development and
No, Pushpak, we have references of technology, and which sometimes some people say it's a mythical or it's like more like story or so those challenges are there. So of course, it's a ancient time of a technology more start with in a true sense, which we see industrialization process is actually like industrial, like 18th centuries or beginning of 19th centuries onwards, we see technology, what we understood. If you say ki science, like Aryabhat, mathematics or something, some formulas, scientific formulas, which were space also Aryabhat. So some of technology, so you can look into the history there, ancient literature. So Aryabhat, what he spoke about is spacecraft or something you can discuss on there. So these are the books by these people can help you in doing, and then you have to identify mathematical formula, Aryabhat, and not on the Ramayana and Mahabharata, which looks more like some way not accepted by there, but these are the scientific development which has taken place in the ancient. Their books and literature, if you look into, you may find something. And I don't know how much But these days the importance is there. And also if you try in the archive, you may find some good literature on there. And once you complete, so this will help future generation to work on that. So you have to work a little bit hard compared to all of us. And definitely it will be helpful for this. So that's why I said even ancient, there's a huge gap. Literature is not there. You are thinking how to proceed, how to find out, how to write 300 pages. It's become very difficult. So what I suggest, you focus on the how to enlarge the scope of your ancient technology or science and technology. So you have to widen your definition. You're not technological. Reference of scientific development, scientific in development part, and there you can divide and then you can proceed. So that you have to work a little bit carefully.
Okay, thank you.
Okay,
Thanks a
thank
lot,
you
sir.
so much, sir. Thank you. Tomorrow also we have session with the sir. I think first session is there with the sir only. So we can discuss the rest of the questions tomorrow also.
All right, I will start tomorrow. Asif bhai, so tomorrow we'll start your question. So you remember, you keep that your question if I miss the chart. But tomorrow, Asif ji, I request you, you begin your question and then I'll answer. I'll also work on the IP and technology transfer in climate change. So we'll begin with that and little bit research design, and we'll proceed accordingly. All right.
Okay, thank you so much, sir. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. So see you tomorrow morning. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Dear participants, our next resource person is joining. We will start by 2:45 as scheduled. He has some technical problem in joining. So just stay with us for 5 minutes. Professor Veer Singh is joining. उसे दोबारा भेजना शायद वो एक्सपायर कर दिया होगा ठीक है
Dear participants, please turn on the camera. Dear participants, it will take another 2 to 3 minutes. Our resource person is about to join. Sorry for the inconvenience.
Join us.
Dear participants, so sorry for the inconvenience. Due to some technical issue, our resource person is not able to join. So we have to wait for another 5 minutes.
No problem, ma'am.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Hello. Is someone listening?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Sir, we are so sorry. Actually, due to some technical issues, sir, our resource person is not able to join.
Okay.
That's the reason, sir. Yes, sir.
Ma'am, would the program continue, or
Sir,
would
you
there
just
be
give me
some?
2 to 3 minutes. Just give me 2 3 minutes.
Okay,
Then what we'll do the break right now and continue with the next session. This
Yeah,
we
ma'am. Yeah.
we could do. Just
Thank you,
give
ma'am.
me 2 minutes, sir. Dear participants, so sorry for the inconvenience. Now we'll take lunch break and again we'll meet at 1:30.
Okay, ma'am. Thank you.
Alright, ma'am. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much. And so sorry for the
Thank you, ma'am.
inconvenience.
Ma'am,
Okay,
would
thank
there
you.
be these two sessions combined after the lunch?
Yes, yes, yes.
All right. Thank you, ma'am.
Because resource person will be the same, so we'll take two
Yeah.
sessions altogether. Yeah.
Obviously.
Thank you.
Thank you. I can understand. Thank you, ma'am. Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.